Great day. This is Dr. Cunningham. I wanted to explain something to my viewers and possibly to those whom I've been able to be in contact during my life's journey. I believe that there's this looming question about time frame in which a doctorate is completed. And sometimes people view time that is required to complete a task or to complete a particular season or journey of life having to do with the experience in isolation, but it really isn't. The doctoral process is one of the most rigorous processes to complete academically. Again, it's one of the highest degrees that a person can obtain. And the reason why only 1.6% of the United States has doctorates or PhDs. And then to go a step further, usually 50%, if not a little bit more, actually complete everything but the dissertation or accept the dissertation. So the reason why I'm saying this is because I want to make it clear before I share my own experience. Now, each academic, or each university may have different expectations or time frames in which someone is able to complete a PhD. For example, there are certain programs that allow a person to be able to complete it within 3 years. And then there are certain programs that give you up to 7 years. The program I attended gives at least 4 years to be a part of the program, up to 7 years to be a part of the program. Okay, so that's that part. So now let's discuss the structure of doctoral programs. Now I want to make it clear. A doctoral program or a PhD focuses on particular skill sets like teaching, like research, like being able to provide supervision and advanced clinical treatment. So that is the marriage and family therapy and most likely social work or psychology, things of that nature. But even psychology, they may focus more on the practical, evaluations that they're able to, fulfill for particular diagnoses. So with that being said, I just need to be able to say this, that the first 2 years of academics, if someone is going to school full-time for their doctorate, it takes 2 years. Sometimes there are students that decide, because they have to work while also going to school, that they have to actually get their academics completed within maybe 3 or 4 years. Because again, if they're going full-time, which are day classes, up to evening classes, and possibly being an adjunct in order to get teaching experience, depending on what your academic experience is like, because you can tailor it in some ways. It requires anywhere from maybe 2 to 4 years just to complete the academics. Okay, now with that being said, it depends upon your particular journey afterwards, because you can go into an externship or an internship, it's called. And then after that, you can start your dissertation, or you can do it the flip side, meaning that right after your academics, you have qualifying exams, which are essentially a bunch of papers that you have to write in order to prove that you are well versed in all 4 facets that I explained earlier, which have to do with teaching, research, clinical experience, as well as supervision. So once that's completed and you've essentially passed the qualifying exams, that allows you to be able to go into your dissertation and, into your internships. So, to complete or to start your dissertation, excuse me. Now, my experience was that I completed my 2 years of academics because I was able to move to New Hampshire, focus on my schooling, had a great living situation where it was kind of like a job, but essentially I had a free apartment as long as I took care of a person, made sure they got to their day program during the day, and that was it. And that was a part of my way of being able to have a place to live. And so that helped me not have to work while I was focusing on my academics, because then that also, takes away from one's ability to be able to just focus on their academics. Because again, getting a doctorate ultimately leads to being able to create something new or answer a question that hasn't been answered before. And creativity or thinking really requires energy. And I need people to understand that. It really requires energy and it requires your undivided attention. And I'm saying that as a caveat before I go into the next portion of the discussion, which has to do with the dissertation. Dissertation can take a lot of time, and it's supposed to be essentially a solo research project. Now, feasibly, most research projects after you graduate, or even the ones that you complete while you're going through your academics, are done in teams. And even if they're done individually, they're usually just to brainstorm and kind of create a structure and to write papers about what the research is going to be like, or a mini research study. But to really go into depth regarding a particular topic, to address everything that already exists as far as knowledge regarding that particular topic, and then for you to prove why your question is relevant to adding to the research that already exists, and then doing the research in order to answer the question takes time, which is the reason why the dissertation is of great focus, and the reason why usually that's where people end up falling off from the doctoral process or the PhD process. So, with that being said, if someone is doing quantitative research, usually once you gather the data, you're able to just input it into different softwares, specifically like SPSS. And you're able to kind of manipulate not manipulate the numbers, but to utilize the information that you're given in order to be able to see what the results are telling you about a certain population or number of people that are part of a particular population, and then you're able to draw conclusions. Now, when you do qualitative research, that is utilizing interviews, gathering data, and then you have to sit down and actually transcribe what has been recorded and then turn around and actually make meaning of the words that people have shared. Now, people will say, who know research, that qualitative research, generally speaking, takes a lot longer than quantitative research would. So, from a practical standpoint, if someone is attempting to finish their research project within a certain period of time, they're probably going to go with quantitative, because qualitative has a lot more nuances that a person has to focus on with regards to how they make meaning of their words, how they disseminate the data, and even when gathering the data, not allowing one's own particular perceptions and biases to get in the way of them even interviewing the person. So, when I actually shared my research topic, and my research topic is qualitative, which again takes longer to analyze data and to disseminate the information, I was told from the very beginning, when I determined who was going to be on my research committee or my dissertation committee, they said, Norja, I'm really going to recommend that, or it'd be best if you're not working during the time while you're working on your dissertation. And I heard them, but at the same time, I recognized for the practicality of life that also needed to work. But then when I work, that means that my focus is somewhere else, and I'm having to essentially allocate my focus in different spaces and places at different points in time. And, what they were saying was very wise and accurate, but it doesn't mean it's impossible to complete your dissertation. But what it means is that if you want to complete your dissertation within 1 or 2 years, again, depending upon your experience, because I went from 2 years of academics to then having at least a year where I needed to complete my clinical hours, that led to me being able to get my license, because I wanted to make sure I had my license before I graduated from my doctoral degree. Because again, remember, right after my master's, I went directly to my doctoral program. Now, had I taken a year off, I could have completed my year of academics or my year of hours to be licensed before I started the program. So then when I started the program, I would just focus on obtaining my PhD. So there's 2 years of academics. Then after that, a year or a little bit more of me providing clinical so that I can obtain hours toward my license, and also providing supervision. And then from there, in the midst of that year, I was also working on my qualifying exam. So again, think about it in these terms. When I'm not meeting with clients and supervising other supervisees, or the two supervisees I was responsible for, then I was also focusing on completing the essentially like 4 different papers. And one overarching paper that I end up having to work on after submitting that one paper, after submitting the 4 papers. And then they cleared me to say, okay, now you can go ahead and start working on your dissertation. Now, up to that point, I also went into my doctoral program having a few different topics that I wanted to consider. There was one topic I was going to work on at the same time for practicality reasons or particular constraints. I ended up not going with that particular dissertation topic. So I kind of pivoted and then focused my attention on a different dissertation topic, which was more relevant, at that particular time, because it was something that was on my mind and I kind of wanted to make sure I was aware of it and kind of knew what was going on regarding that particular topic. So then that requires time, because at that point, what I have to do is a dissertation proposal, but it's recommended before you submit your proposal that you have read enough of the literature so that you're able to justify, again, why you are going to ask this particular question in order to answer a particular question, and why your research is relevant. And you have to go before the IRB, which essentially is an institution for research, in order to be cleared to say that it's going to be ethical and humane to implement a particular research project, the methods in which you're going to gather the information, and it's not going to harm any person. So that is a part of the checks and balances, so to speak, with regards to a dissertation. And then once you complete that part, then you actually have to start finding participants. So that means going through the process of contacting people, asking people, are you willing to be a part of the project? Are you willing to be a part of the research? And sometimes you have to incentivize it, or give them incentives in order to get people to participate, which is the reason why sometimes you end up with a budget, depending on if you're able to get grants and things of that nature for your research, so that people will get like a $25 gift card to Amazon or something like that. So it's a process that requires time and focus and energy. And then with consideration of that, that means that during your dissertation, whether you are at the stage of proposal, or at the stage of gathering data, or if you're at the stage of analysis, or if you're at the stage of dissemination, all of it requires time at the library, or a lot of time, connecting with people to see who's going to participate. And so whether you are single or married, but for those whom are single, again, if you're working, then that still means you have to pause, to pivot, to focus on work, and then pause again, to pivot again, to then focus on the research. Now, if you're a person who has a marriage and kids, this is where I'm going to pause, is because I'm not saying it from a negative standpoint, but I'm saying it from a practical standpoint, so people know that there's research that actually addresses what happens to relationships, or do relationships fare well during dissertations. Again, because a dissertation is supposed to be an individual research project. So with that being said, there are some times where couples really need to have very open and honest discussions, because when one person is working on a dissertation, they will have to give their time and attention to the dissertation. And so there are a lot of times when people have had concerns in their marriages during the dissertation. Now, what I'll say is that I've met a lot more people from my connections in doctoral programs where they've been able to maintain their marriage, and also to make sure that their children were okay while going through a dissertation, but they also had a great community. And, I don't want to, maybe I necessarily need to go into another dissertation, because I did a dissertation seminar when I was teaching at the academic level. But sometimes, individuals, if they're doing qualitative research, can, for example, pay someone just to do the transcriptions. So then it gives them a little bit of time and focus to be able to spend with their family, while someone else is kind of just literally just transcribing all of the information that was gathered as far as data. But there are small little ways of being able to maybe, to allocate your time wisely. At the same time, some people that are going through dissertations aren't necessarily dealing with a grand budget where they can just pay people to transcribe for hours. Because when we're talking about transcription, hours upon hours upon hours of information that literally is being transcribed onto paper, verbatim of what someone has said. So, with that being said, again, there's relationships that can weather the dissertation, but they really need to be in open lines of communication. And also, they have to be okay with being able to say, today, I just need time just to focus on the academics. And so that means that there could be moments in time where there's going to be isolation, but that means that the partner has to be solid and the couple has to be solid with being able to say, we're okay, even if we're not necessarily spending all of the same quality time together that we did. And especially if you're parents, because the practicality is that when being parents, a lot of times couples spend more times focusing on the kids than they do on each other. So then when you add a dissertation, that's almost kind of like having another child. I don't want to say it in that way because, but it is your academic baby, so to speak. So with that being said, it really does require a lot more time and energy than maybe the couple once had in order to be able to date and things like that. So it's important to be able to schedule times for dates. At the same time, it doesn't mean that they will have their full undivided attention, and the other person may have to be okay with hearing about their research, even if they don't understand it for a period of time, because that's really where their mind is going to be inundated with all this information of stuff that they've researched for extensively. I mean, even my research study, I had to literally focus on what was current at that time, and then to retrospectively look at like 50, 60, 70 years of research about stress and about secondary traumatic stress and how did they even start discussing researching that topic and burnout and stuff like so crossover and spillover and like so it was a lot of articles, a lot of stacks of paper. I mean, thank God for the laptop, but at the same time I'm also literally grateful for blue light glasses now because my eyes, just from many months and many hours of having to stare at a computer screen to read articles and then reading a lot of books. So then your mind literally goes into overload, not in a bad way, but with all the information. So then a lot of times a person's just going to share and discuss those particular topics that they're researching specifically for their research topic. And so just to keep that in mind that, again, if the person is married and they have children, they still are working to allocate their time and their energy and their focus with regards to the dissertation as well as quality time with their family. And then if you have other responsibilities, whether it's at work or even in ministry, here, I'll give you an example, not to go into any detail, but while I was also teaching at a university that is a Christian university, I had an opportunity to meet different people who were of the faith, of the Christian faith, but were also in positions of being pastors. So if they're focusing on their own academics, dissertation, and then have the responsibility of maintaining a church, it's possible to work through their dissertation, but they also really had to kind of shift how they were working on what they were working on, because it's just one person having to allocate their time and their energy and their life to complete and to maintain and to continue to bring value to every hat that they're wearing really is a very intricate balance. And that's the best way to put it. And so ultimately a dissertation can take anywhere from 1 year to maybe 3 years, depending on a person's necessity to gather more data, or just because of life's circumstances, again, that I explained earlier, that have to do with not just focusing on a dissertation, but also focusing on their family life, focusing on their ministry, focusing on work and their dissertation. So there's so many different factors to consider, which is the reason why universities give anywhere from 3 or 4 years, up to 7 years. Now, for those whom I'm aware of who didn't have to work, were able to just focus on their academics, they were able to complete everything within the 4 years. Now, there were some that still did require time because, again, if you're working on a particular research project, research also has particular standards in order to be able to draw certain conclusions or have transferable information. Qualitative research allows for transferability of someone's story, and in quantitative research, there's conclusions that can be drawn. Why? Because in quantitative research, generally speaking, a person has to be able to meet a certain number of people within a particular population in order to be able to say, well, you can kind of say conclusively that that particular population views this particular topic or answers this particular question in that way, which is different than quantitative research, which has to do with, is it generalizable? Meaning you may meet with fewer people, but you go into greater depth with regards to a particular topic because you're addressing their specific stories. And then so, you have fewer interviews, but it's still a lot of information that has to be analyzed, gathered, analyzed, and then disseminated. So I hope that answers someone's question because, again, this is the reason why explaining the process is important, because not everyone is aware of the process of getting a doctorate, which again is even still different than someone getting a medical degree. At the same time, people have to keep in mind is that over the generations, the culture of each degree kind of changed a little bit. But think about it from this perspective. Sometimes it has to do with what age someone starts, the clarity in which someone has when they're going into the doctoral process with regards to knowing what their dissertation topic is going to be, and if it's still relevant once they get to the point to be able to address their dissertation topic. And then also it has to do with the team whom you work with and the circumstances of your life. So it's important to be able to focus on, practically where your energy is, your ability to focus, whom you have to speak with in order to clarify, in order to maintain your relationships, so that once you're done with your dissertation and you're done with your academics, that people are okay with you circling back to them and saying, hey, okay, I'm around again. I'm alive and well. Everything's finished. Like, can we continue on with life? Like, because that's really what it is. I mean, it really does require a time away. It's not that you're isolating yourself because you want to, but it's like an isolation in order to be able to put all of your time, energy, and focus on what you need to focus on. And at the end of the day, it's a very invigorating and it's a great experience, but it also can be grueling. I saw a movie recently, and I forget the name of the movie, but it's a movie about an Australian girl who decided she was going to travel solo on a boat all around the world. So she circumvented, like literally traveled all around the world in a sailboat. And she was able to make the journey. But I would recommend watching it just so you could see all of the different sort of like the excitement, all of the sort of ebbs and flows of the emotional process, and also the process regarding her way of thinking while going through it. And in some ways, that's kind of the doctoral process, and especially the dissertation. So if you ever have any questions, it's okay to be able to ask me. But it's important for people to realize that it's good to know and to have the particular information regarding the experience, but everyone's experience is going to be different. So I kind of just gave you a little bit of information regarding my experience, as well as kind of a sense of, what the numbers are saying, or in a general sense, what research is saying overall about dissertations and the ways to be able to make it through the process in order to end up with the results of, a dissertation that one can be proud of. And also to know that you implemented the particular methods or the methodology with integrity in order to be able to lead to results that can add to the information and the research that exists within your particular field. Okay, so I trust you all have a great one, and speak to you later.